Grandfather took her to Peter's house so she could greet him. As soon as they met, they hugged each other and were very happy. Every day, her grandfather took her to Peter and he came back carrying her on his shoulder because she would not be able to walk on the snow. One day, the aunt returns, having found a family willing to adopt Heidi. She goes to the grandfather's house to take her, but the grandfather gets angry and refuses, saying Heidi will stay with him. But the aunt was determined to take Heidi and send her to people to adopt her so she could benefit from them. She waited for Heidi in a place far from the house, and as soon as she saw her, she hugged her and told her she found a big house whose owners wanted a beautiful girl like her to be a companion to their daughter. She said she could learn and live a better life there. However, Heidi told her she was happy where she was and wanted to live with her grandfather. The aunt lied to her, saying, "Your grandfather doesn't want you and agreed for you to leave." Heidi became upset, believed her aunt, and was forced to go with her. They boarded the train together, and Heidi stood in the last car, watching the mountains and bidding farewell to her grandfather's house on the mountain. After a while, Peter arrived at the grandfather's house and told him, "Did you see what happened?" The aunt took Heidi and left the village. The grandfather ran through the village streets like a madman, searching for her. The villagers saw him and mocked him, saying, "How could an innocent, helpless child like Heidi live with such a cold-hearted man?" But he ignored their words, returned home sad, and missed Heidi. On the other hand, the aunt arrived with Heidi at the house where she would live. The maid saw Heidi and was disgusted by her because she was wearing boys' clothes and walking barefoot without shoes. The maid took the aunt aside and said, "This girl doesn't fit in with us or our lifestyle." The aunt reassured her, saying, "Don't worry, with time, she'll adapt to you. The important thing is to give me my share of the money we agreed upon." Then the aunt left Heidi alone and walked away. Heidi met Clara, the daughter of the house's owner. We learned that Clara's father and grandmother wanted a girl to live with them to keep Clara company in her loneliness because Clara had partial paralysis and couldn't play like other children, as she was confined to a wheelchair and couldn't take a single step. However, Clara had a kind heart and liked Heidi. Later during lunch, the maid, Heidi, and Clara sat at the table. The maid explained the house rules to Heidi, saying she must not make noise and must follow all orders quietly. We see that Heidi couldn't eat with a spoon like them because she wasn't used to it. She was so tired and worn out from the day's events that she fell asleep sitting in her place. The next day, she woke up for breakfast and still struggled to eat with a spoon. She drank from the bowl as she was accustomed to. The maid scolded her and told her to eat with a spoon, but Clara intervened, saying, "Don't get upset with her. I'll teach her how to use a spoon." Clara patiently and lovingly taught her, and they spent a lovely time together. After the meal, they wandered around the mansion, and Heidi pushed Clara's wheelchair, entertaining her so she wouldn't feel disabled. They reached Clara's mother's room, where there was a photo of Clara standing on her feet next to her mom. Heidi asked her, "How are you standing in the photo?" Clara replied, "After my mom passed away, I got sick and couldn't move anymore because of my grief for my mother." She said she missed her mom a lot and started crying. Heidi felt sad, comforted her, and said, "From now on, I am your sister and friend, and I will never leave you. Do we have a deal?" Later, it was time for Clara's private lesson. The teacher asked Heidi to read a book, but Heidi said she didn't know how to read. The teacher discovered she couldn't even recognize letters. Heidi told him she believed there was no point in education and that it was useless. The teacher got angry with her and told the maid, "Heidi's level is terrible. You need to find another teacher for her." The maid replied, "What is your job? Your duty is to teach and educate her." Heidi was still attached to her grandfather to the extent that whenever she entered a room, she tried to open the window to see the mountain where her grandfather's house was, but the windows were tightly shut, making it difficult to open them. One day, she asked. The next day, Heidi took Clara, and they went out together to explore the city markets. Clara was happy because she rarely went out, and she felt that God had compensated her with a beautiful friend like Heidi. They reached the church, and Heidi wanted to climb to the top to see the mountains. Clara told her, "I'll wait for you here while you go up." Heidi climbed to the highest point in the church but was surprised to see no mountains, only houses. She became scared and started calling out for her grandfather, feeling sad. Meanwhile, the maid entered Clara's room and was shocked to find her missing. She ordered the servants to search for her everywhere, but they couldn't find her. Sebastian realized they had likely gone to the church, so he left the house to search for them. He found them walking in the city streets and brought them back home. When the maid saw them, she scolded Heidi, blaming her for what had happened. Clara tried to defend her, but the maid told her, "Stay out of this. It's none of your business." The maid decided to punish Heidi by not letting her eat and making her stand by the wall as punishment. Heidi felt upset by the maid's treatment, took off the dress she was wearing, put on her old clothes, and insisted on leaving the house. However, she couldn't bring herself to leave without saying goodbye to Clara. She hugged her before leaving. The maid saw her hugging Clara and asked, "Where are you going, dear?" Heidi replied, "I'm going to my grandfather because I'm upset." The maid grabbed her and threw her bag away so she couldn't leave. Heidi said, "I'm scared and want to go to my grandfather." Clara saw that Heidi was determined to leave and became upset, crying because she had grown fond of her. When Heidi saw her friend Clara crying, she changed her mind and decided to stay. Clara became very ill from her sadness, feeling that no one around her loved her. Heidi comforted her, saying, "Don't be upset with me, I'm sorry. I promise I'll never leave you." Clara forgave her and said, "I love you too." Heidi asked about Clara's father and grandmother, and Clara told her they would return from their trip the next day. Indeed, the next day Clara's father and grandmother returned. They were kind and welcoming to Heidi, but the nanny complains about her and says that Heidi is not like them or one of them. She can read, but it's hard for her to live in a clean place like this. However, the grandmother doesn't believe her and says she will deal with her and judge her herself. The grandmother enters Heidi's room before she sleeps and starts telling her a story about shepherds. Heidi enjoys the story, but the grandmother only tells half of it. Heidi asks her to finish the story, but the grandmother tells her that if she learns to read, she will be able to find out the ending on her own. She does this to motivate her to learn to read. Indeed, Heidi stays up all night learning how to read. She wakes up in the morning and continues reading until she manages to learn some letters correctly. She attends private lessons with Clara, and the teacher is surprised by her improvement. The whole family watches her, happy and clapping for her, encouraging her. Days pass, and the grandmother returns to her home. She says goodbye to the girls, who are sad to see her leave. In the middle of the night, one of the maids hears the palace door opening by itself. She gets scared and calls for Sebastian's, telling him what happened. They are frightened and suspect the house might be haunted. The next day, they tell Clara's father what happened, saying the palace might have ghosts. The father dismisses their fears, saying he doesn't believe in such things. He calls his doctor friend and asks him to stay with him to investigate. At midnight, they are startled by the sound of the door opening. Armed, they quietly go to see who is opening the door. They are surprised to find Heidi opening it. The doctor discovers that she is sleepwalking. He waits until she returns to her bed and wakes her up. He asks her what she was dreaming about. She tells him she was dreaming about her grandfather because she misses him. The doctor realizes she is suffering from homesickness and tells Clara's father that Heidi needs to return to her grandfather or risk psychological issues. The father, however, is not convinced and insists she stays because Clara is happy with Heidi's company. The doctor gets upset and leaves. The father spends the night thinking about the situation, not wanting to be unfair to the poor girl. In the end, he decides to let Heidi return home. The next day, he talks to Clara to convince her. Clara gets upset, breaks things, and, upon seeing Heidi, shouts at her saying, "If you want to leave, go ahead. I was wrong to consider you my friend. If you leave, don't come back." The nanny takes Heidi to her room. The father talks to Heidi, telling her, "I won't force you to stay. If you want to go back to your grandfather," Sebastian, the head servant, to open the window for her. He was a kind man who didn't want to upset her, so he opened the window and even brought her a chair to stand on. Heidi looked out the window but only saw many houses. She asked, "Where are the mountains?" He replied, "To see the mountains, you need to go to the church over there and stand on top of it because it's the highest place in the city." Welcome to CINEPRO, where we bring your favorite movies back to life with quick recaps, hidden details, and everything you missed. The story begins with a little orphan girl named Heidi. Her parents passed away, leaving her with no one in the world except her aunt. However, her aunt gets a job far from the village, and it's not allowed for her to take Heidi with her. This posed a problem for her since Heidi needed someone to take care of her. Since her grandfather was the only family member left, the aunt had no choice but to take Heidi to him. The grandfather lived in an isolated place on the mountain, far from the village, because he had a bad reputation, and no one in the village liked him. He was known as a harsh, merciless person. When the aunt arrives at his house with sweet little Heidi, he looks grumpy and unwelcoming. The aunt asks him to take care of his granddaughter since she has no one else in the world, but he tells her to take her and leave because he doesn't want any trouble. At that moment, the aunt has no choice but to leave Heidi at the house and leave. She tells Heidi not to worry, saying he won't harm her. The grandfather gets angry, takes Heidi, and tells her to leave and follow her aunt. but Heidi innocently replies, saying her aunt doesn't want her, and she has no one but him. His heart remains hard, and he leaves her alone, closing the door behind him. Heidi calls out to him, but it's no use. With no place to sleep, Heidi ends up in the animal barn. The next day, the grandfather enters the barn and gives her some milk to drink while he figures out how to get rid of her. He then takes her to the priest in the city, asking him to find someone to adopt her because he doesn't want her to live with him. The priest examines her and finds her healthy, promising to look for someone to adopt her. But he insists the girl must stay with her grandfather until then. The grandfather protests, saying he can't stand her and doesn't want her to live with him. The priest tells him he has a religious duty to take care of her until someone adopts her. Reluctantly, the grandfather takes her back home. Once they arrive, Heidi stands at the door, saying she will stay in the barn so as not to bother him. But the grandfather tells her to come inside and stay in the house, though he warns her she'll only stay for a few days. Since there's only one bed in the house, Heidi goes upstairs and finds some straw. She asks if she can sleep on the straw, and he agrees. Heidi is overjoyed and hugs him, feeling grateful that he let her stay in the house. Later, a boy named Peter arrives, responsible for tending the goats. The grandfather asks Peter to take Heidi to the mountains with the goats to keep her out of his way. Heidi enjoys her time with Peter, running and playing with the goats. While she's distracted, Peter sneaks into her bag, eats her sandwiches, and denies it when she asks him about her missing food. Heidi believes him when he blames a goat. One day, Peter sees two goats fighting and angrily hits them with his stick. Heidi stops him, saying the goats are living beings with flesh and blood who feel pain just like humans. Peter explains that if the goats fight, their milk production decreases. Heidi bargains with him, saying she'll give him half her food every day if he stops hitting the goats. Peter agrees, happy with the deal. Days pass, and Heidi and Peter grow closer, enjoying their time in the beautiful nature. One day, Heidi tells Peter that her grandfather plans to send her to the priest once someone adopts her. Peter feels sad, knowing he'll be lonely again. Meanwhile, Heidi grows closer to her grandfather, who begins to soften and love her because of her innocence and kindness. She decides to take her belongings and to sleep in the barn. So, Grandpa asked her if Peter told her anything about him, but Heidi kept quiet and did not respond. So he said to her that everything that is said about him is rumors, and you can either believe what you hear or believe what you see. So Heidi was convinced by his words and began to prepare and tell him, "I have no one but you, Grandpa." She began to become attached to him day after day and love him more. One day, Heidi sees her grandfather making a new chair and asks if it's for her. He confirms, saying there's no one else living with him. Heidi is overjoyed, realizing he has decided to let her stay. She hugs him, saying she loves him, and asks him never to leave her. When the school term begins, Peter tells Heidi he won't see her until the next spring. Heidi asks her grandfather to let her attend school too, but he refuses, saying the school is far, and she would have to walk a long distance every day. Winter arrives, and Heidi feels bored and unable to enjoy her time without Peter. To cheer her up, her grandfather makes her a sled, and they have fun sledding on the snow together. Heidi is thrilled, and they spend wonderful moments together. And her, Azrenia, I have no problem with it. Heidi is overjoyed, but remembers her friend Clara and goes to say goodbye. She knocks on Clara's door, but Clara, upset, doesn't respond. Sebastian takes Heidi to her village. The villagers are thrilled to see her, amazed at how beautiful she looks in her new clothes. Peter is especially happy to see her and hugs her. Heidi runs towards her grandfather, whom she missed dearly. On the way, she takes off the dress she was wearing, feeling trapped in it. She runs, calling out to her grandfather, who, upon hearing her voice, can't believe his ears. He runs to her, crying, and takes her in his arms. It is one of the happiest moments of their lives. Heidi continues her life with her grandfather, happy but occasionally missing Clara. One day, Heidi writes a letter to Clara, inviting her to visit. The grandmother reads Heidi's letter to Clara, who is saddened because she misses Heidi too. The grandmother decides to take Clara to Heidi's home to cheer her up. When they meet, they hug each other, overwhelmed with happiness. Heidi's grandfather and Clara's grandmother talk. The grandmother tells him she will leave Clara with him for a few days to enjoy a change of scenery with Heidi. The grandfather agrees, saying Clara is like a daughter to him, and he will take good care of her. Heidi and Clara spend happy times together, playing all day. Peter, however, feels jealous because Clara has taken his friend away. One day, he decides to take revenge on Clara by throwing her wheelchair off a high hill. The next morning, everyone wakes up to find Clara's wheelchair missing. They search everywhere but can't find it. They suspect Peter is responsible because of his jealousy. Peter is confronted and asked to take care of the girls as a condition for forgiveness. He agrees, and they leave Clara and Heidi with him. Clara sees the mountains Heidi always talked about and is amazed by their beauty. Heidi goes to fetch berries, leaving Clara sitting alone. While sitting, Clara feels a butterfly on her leg. She is shocked because she is supposed to have no feeling in her legs. She tries to move her toes and is surprised to find them moving. She leans on a nearby rock and manages to stand. When Heidi sees her, she is astonished and can't believe her eyes. She runs to Clara, supporting her as she takes her first steps. Clara's father arrives, furious at the grandmother for bringing Clara to such a place. He demands to know where his daughter is. Hearing her father's voice, Clara calls out to him. When he sees her walking, he is stunned and speechless. He and the grandmother cry tears of joy. Clara hugs her father and grandmother. The father thanks Heidi for everything she has done, apologizing for being angry earlier. Clara hugs Heidi, crying, and tells her, "You are the best friend I've ever had. You made up for all the sadness I've experienced." Clara leaves with her father and grandmother, saying goodbye to Heidi with a smile. And Heidi started focusing on her education and going to school, because she understood that education is important. She repeated that she wants to become a story writer. The first story she will write is her life story. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to get more new videos.